when we first opened, there was actually an apartment upstairs. And there's a poor guy living up there. And we blasted him out of there within about 2 weeks after we opened Joe's. I mean, literally, you know, one of the main things we had going for us was the great music we were playing. Yeah. And we put a big stereo in this tiny little room, you know, 4 speakers in each corner. And so the place was jumping and the sounds were thumping, and he had no. So we ended up renting the upstairs very quickly then after we kind of blasted him out. And for a short time, Steve and I actually lived up there. And then it didn't take us long to figure out, hey, we need to expand the business. We can find another place to live. Yeah. And so we actually got the upstairs of Eskimo Joe's open then by the fall of '75, just in time for the Bedlam football game that year. So that's when we opened the upstairs of Eskimo Joe's. Yeah.
So you mentioned music, and obviously you mentioned music back when your sister was playing and you had access to a record player when she wasn't around. Right. Music's obviously a big passion of yours and was kind of a key then in the business as well.
You know, it really was. One of the things that, well, okay, so here it's the simplest business in the world. We're a 3-2 bar back when the drinking age was 18. Mm-hmm. So, you know, anybody 18 and over could come in the place. Back in '75, really the local moray was if you had a college ID, you could go to the local bars. Yeah. So, and most kids don't get to OSU until they're 18, but some could have been 17. Sure. At any rate, obviously a different era, just a whole different time. So we had cold beer. The beer, it's homogenous. You know, there's only Coors and Bud pretty much. There wasn't any such thing as light beer in 1975. I loved Coors, so we tapped Coors. We only had Coors on tap. We had Budweiser in long necks. Loved this. I love this. A draft beer in 1975 was 30 cents for a 10-ounce draw, and a 60-ounce pitcher we sold for $1.35. A lot of times we'd have 10-cent beer specials. Yeah. So one of our early hook lines was 10-cent brew, $1 will do. 10 would be plenty.
That's crazy.
But interestingly, the product was considered non-intoxicating alcoholic beverage, 3.2% maximum by weight, and it was controlled by OTC. Anything stronger was controlled by Able. So anyway, that was just the nature of the marketplace back in 1975. So what we had going for us was we wanted our beer to be the coldest. Certainly matched up with the name my original partner Steve came up with, Eskimo Joes. Yeah. You know, and people of course always ask, how'd you come up with that name? Well, Steve made it up, and I was like, really? What does that mean? Eskimo Joe's in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But the only thing I could think about it was, well, it's so bizarre. Maybe people will remember it. You know, it's just out there. Yeah. And I did kind of like the rhyme, the Eskimo Joes or Mojo, you know, that kind of a sound. But most importantly, every time the name issue came up, all of Steve and all of our friends would start chanting, Eskimo Joes, Eskimo Joes. So I knew we were going there pretty quickly. But thankfully, you know, I had 3 hours of marketing at Oklahoma State University, so I figure that kind of makes me a marketing guru, right? You know, but I knew we needed a logo from my principles of marketing class, and I remember studying logos and that mark that would automatically conjure up our business in the heart and mind of our guests, with or without the name attached. I remember studying about the Coca-Cola logo being the most famous one in the world, and that, you know, people would know the logo, just even if they were blind, they could hold a Coke bottle in their hands, and even the shape of the bottle was so iconic and all that. Well, because that's in my mind, I'm thinking we've got to come up with a logo. But we had no idea where we would get a logo. Didn't even think of maybe an advertising agency or anything along those lines. But thankfully, Steve's younger brother knew a kid. Yeah. He said, hey, I know a guy. He's a freshman commercial arts student here. His name's Bill Thompson. I bet he could do it. Cool. Well, let's call him. So Bill drives up in front of Joe's, and he's driving a VW bus, you know. He gets out of his VW bus. He's got hair down, you know, clear down to his rear end. And this is long-haired kid, VW bus, California plates on it. I thought, he looks like an artist. So sure enough, Bill sets up shop in one of the front windows of what's now Eskimo Joe's, and on an art pad, you know, just a full-size artist pad with a magic marker, he knocks out Eskimo Joe and Buffy. It's never changed at all.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with that name because it had some meaning for me. So there's Eskimo Joe, biggest smile I've ever seen. And Buffy the Wonder Dog sitting there next to him. You know, it's a boy and his dog. It's a universal theme. And wow, what a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, it was just one of those things. So I remember saying, Steve, I love it. What do you think? And he goes, it's all right.
It'll do for now.
You know, but what I love about some of these stories, I mean, Steve was a much bolder individual than I was. He also had carpentry skills. You know, we built out the downstairs of that place ourselves. We didn't have the money to hire a contractor, you know. So I just think back on it, and, you know, in a way, as close of friends as we were, you know, we were real different. And, you know, as you have time to reflect on things, you know, the fact that we were different made us much stronger as partners. You know, if we were just exactly alike, you know, you don't need two of those type deal. And just valuing the differences and valuing diversity, obviously, is a principle that, you know, has meant so much to us over 47 years. But, you know, I wouldn't have articulated these things this way in 1975 and at age 22. But with 47 years to reflect on it, it seems real obvious that was important to us. So Steve comes up with the name, his idea to open a place, obviously. His younger brother, you know, sources this artist for us. I mean, just can't thank Steve enough for what an idea he had, and just the fact that we this thing ever occurred. Fast forward 2.5 years, Steve had met his wife at Eskimo Joe's, and he wanted to move on and do some other things. He was actually very entrepreneurial. We looked at several ventures we couldn't get funded, while even in the short time we were partners. But to be honest, so he wanted to sell, I wanted to buy, and I bought his half interest in January 1978. Very amicable dissolution of the partnership. It was, nobody knew who was making the right move for sure, because the business was still so tiny. But I really loved working it. I liked the hospitality piece. I just enjoyed being there. And honestly, Steve's interests were, hey, we can get somebody to run this deal, and we're going to go do a whole bunch of other things. Yeah. And so, you know, I think the way it went was probably the way it was meant to go. But at any rate, I did become the sole proprietor in January of 1978.
Well, when Steve comes up with the idea and this is happening, well, I mean, is there many bars in Stillwater at this point? Was there much competition, or was it just like, hey, I'm going to open a bar because we think we should do, you know, a college campus always needs another bar? Yeah,
there were several, and they were very successful. Yeah. You know, I mean, it was just, you know, something that was happening.
Sure.
Actually, there was a bar just a half a block east of us, the Gray Fox Inn, that was huge, and it was very, very successful. There's another one right across the street from us that was there then and remains today. And so, you know, it was kind of a scene, kind of a thing, to say the least. You know, I like to say, so much for market research, right? I mean, our deal was a 15-minute deal, but I guess we might have done a little market research in the years prior to graduating and opening. I had been in a few of those little honky tonks.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I knew there was a market.
Yeah,
for it.
You know, there's a need some way, right? And how you can be a little different.
Well, you know, I remember in the college business, first econ class, you know, why would you open a business? One reason, make money.
Yeah.
You know, no margin, no mission. if we're not profitable, we can't help anybody. We can't employ anybody. We can't do any good for the greater good. You can't stay in business. So, at any rate, we knew there was a market for beer.